And so being on big box retail, if you're going to get into Target or your product's ever going to get into a big box retailer, it's good to essentially understand this legal pathway that's already been devised by the FDA. Because they have not finalized it, doesn't mean it's not already there to apply for.
So if we're talking to the first-time buyer, they're not concerned about getting to a big box store. They just are looking for some information and they see, okay, the FDA has put out some warnings or the FDA has put a concern. To sum it up, mostly what the FDA has been clamping down on is what you said, is people who may be claiming that their CBD treats something or addresses something when they haven't gone through these regulations.
That's precisely it. If you are looking for a supplier that's going to apply to a, say, ready-made consumer product, and you apply and you say you have a connection to Walmart or whatever, you're going to exploit that large big box. You're going to need to select from a select amount that have started this legal process at least or are aware of it, so that you can utilize their raw ingredient or end product to make it into that retailer.
Okay, go ahead, Carl.
I'm used to having to testify, so oftentimes I simplify things. Forgive me for doing that. If you either have two paths, it's a medicinal path or a wellness path. If you have a product that makes claims that has no backing other than, well, we have anecdotal evidence, that's a no-go. And you can be a major publicly traded company like GW or Tilray and run afoul of the FDA because you're making claims, hey, we guarantee that this is going to help you sleep better. You can indicate that a product has been shown to contribute to a form of wellness. It might be considered for help some people with sleeping, insomnia, stress. But you cannot make claims that suggest that that's what the product can do. It can contribute to, but it cannot do. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just simply saying the more claims that any company is making that it does, the less I think I would be comfortable with doing business with that particular company if you were going to make a selection of purchasing a product.
Thank you for that. Yes, so it's not that if you're seeing the FDA coming out against a brand that suddenly CBD is unsafe for some reason or another. It's probably these other things that they've run afoul of, over-claiming or overstepping some legal bounds. Let's move on to Josh. So we've got our first-time buyer, and they see this wealth of different products out there, and they're wondering, okay, what's the difference between a full spectrum versus broad spectrum versus isolate? Can you talk a little bit about the differences, please?
Yeah, so an isolate is a single molecule extracted from the hemp plant. Any given molecule can be isolated. That's an isolate. A broad spectrum is a multitude of cannabinoids without THC. And then once you introduce THC, that becomes a full spectrum. At the extraction level, in order to separate these molecules, it's all done by weight, and THC and CBD are very close in weight, and it is virtually impossible to completely separate them. So even though the lab testing is going to show non-detectable, there is still THC in a broad spectrum product.
Have any of you, this just goes out to the panel because I haven't talked to any of you specifically about this before then, but if you've got one of these THCs or one of these CBDs that's showing like 0.000 small amount of THC, has anybody ever run into an instance where there's still been a positive lab test despite it claiming to be non-detectable? Positive lab test in the patient.
Well, you've got two issues. Again, I'm not a scientist, but the issue is how is the testing performed, which can actually cause something to become more detectable, such as you're hot for THC. So each state's somewhat different. I think in West Virginia right now it's 1% total THC. In other states it's 0.3% delta 9 THC, and those are big differences. The issue of as far as detectable is when you're creating the final tincture, just use that as the example, you start with a tar, and again I'm using simplistic terms, but as part of the extraction process, you're creating a high density of not only the CBD but also the THC. You then have to cut it with a solution, if you will. usually some form of oil. It can be coconut oil as an example, so that it brings it back down to below the 0.3%. So again, if there is no discussion or nothing on the label that tells you the amount of CBD or the amount of THC, again, you might question whether the product is just somebody has slapped a label on it, says, ooh, I'm going to make millions of dollars of selling CBD. That would be something to look for.
Thank you. George, if you could tell us a little bit about the differences between, if people might say, okay, this one says it's more advanced because it's water soluble, or there's nanotechnology, or this one has liposomal delivery. If you could talk a little bit about those different terms.
Sure. I've been in nutrition for a while, so in every single trend and the fastest growing herbal ingredient in existence is definitely CBD. But if you look at other trends, whether it be ginsenoside with ginseng or different polysaccharides or medicinal mushrooms, initially what you have people just coming on with milligram wars, and then you have different type of delivery systems, and then you have combining it with other ingredients. And one of the things that people are doing right now to separate themselves from the pack is that they're saying, we're nano or a liposomal. So you have to consider what's going on. First is that I'm not a lawyer, all right? I'm not a lawyer, she's a lawyer. And she's like the consummate Asian person. She's got an MD and a JD. I mean, every single Chinese person would be very, very happy to have her in the family. So I got out as soon as I got a bachelor's degree. I just couldn't hack it anymore. But seriously, first of all, what I would say is this, that you have people saying nanotechnology. Now, I've talked to some pharmaceutical people, and they're saying, hey, have you seen a drug out there that talks about nanotechnology? And I said, well, I don't know. They said, no. Okay, FDA does not like that type of terminology. So you're saying, well, how is everybody else doing it? Well, how is doing it? Because the government's reactive. Does that make sense? The government's reactive, all right? So you gotta be very, very careful. In my opinion, you probably need to get an FDA lawyer to look at your label and see what you're claiming. Does that make sense? And most of the people you talk to who will sell you like a nano solution, and I'm a co-packer, so you gotta think, I'm not doing the extractions like some of these guys are doing. I'm more like the Chinese restaurant, and I'm buying good stuff from US Food or Cisco, and I'm blending in my little iteration, right? I joke around, I'm the Chinese cook in back of P.F. Chang's. I make a good egg roll everywhere, every single state, right? But seriously, when you look at the nano, what you got is that most of them, what it is water soluble. And what they're saying is that if you have an oil soluble, that's the base product, whether it be the crude or distillate. When that goes inside your body, it has to go through 2 passes to get to the liver, where water is just 1 pass, so your body's gonna absorb it faster, all right? But things you have to also consider is that there's a big thing on bioavailability and bioactivity. And there's some people talking about PK studies right now, and that's like the gold standard right now, but I haven't seen one yet. Okay? If somebody can come up with a PK study and show me definitively how their solution is going inside your bloodstream, a real human bloodstream, then that is like the gold standard. And it's coming. It's coming. I got some friends putting some money down for the PK study. So you have to realize that if you're brand new, you're gonna pay a lot more money for a quote unquote like a water miscible iteration. Does that make sense? And there's really, in my opinion, there's really nothing like purely water soluble, because oil and water doesn't mix, it's just miscible. It's just kind of in there and bounced out. So you have to pay more money first and foremost, or you go with another camp, and I sell a lot of both water miscible plus the original stuff with the oils. And then with the oils, what you can do to increase absorbability is just make sure your co-packer is going to add some vitamin E, also some sunflower lecithin, and that breaks it down so it's more absorbable. But what I've seen is that it's a camp. There's a lot of people who still like the specific oil because you can taste it more, you can smell it more. There's some olfactory type of seduction that they're going, that's the original stuff. And there is a new camp coming out going, hey, I just want the water soluble stuff. These are the things you have to try to figure out what's true to your heart and also what works for you, kind of. Because at the end of the day is that when you're starting out a brand, you know, you're 5-6 years late from some of the more dominant brands out there. So you got to find something, in my opinion, that's true to your story. It's just a story with somebody in your family or with somebody with yourself. And when you go with that angle, that's not something that somebody can combat with. Does that kind of make sense? Because if you just get into technology, I'm going to tell you, I'm not smart enough. I didn't have enough mental fortitude to go through and get a JD and an MD. You know, you're going to try to compete with somebody like that, they're going to fight you all day long. You're not going to be able to beat them on just pure facts, right? So what you have to do is you have to try to build out and figure out where you want to attack. And in my opinion, is you go with one vertical. Don't just go out, I'm going to have gummies, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that, unless you have $1 billion, and then he wants to talk to you first, right? But you really need to focus on one specific aspect that you feel most passionate about, build that brand now, get that tribe going around you that's hardcore, and then later on you can add additional iterations.
Okay, we are talking, just so we know, to the
Yes.
first-time buyer of CBD, not somebody who's going to be
first-time
making
buyer.
it. Yeah, so like if somebody
Can I
like,
take a crack
I
at that?
apologize. Okay.
sure, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah.
Again,
I'm sure
I'll just-
George is very useful to the brands.
I'm gonna just take a crack at unpacking that, and everything that he says is absolutely
Thank you.
true. So the real issue here, which is one of the items that I was going to talk about, is the issue of bioavailability, and that sounds like a fancy term. So what's hot is tincture and gummy bears, and so something to think about. As what he was saying from a medical standpoint, it has to go through your system before you feel any effect. If it comes into you and you're taking it at 20 milligrams of whatever that component is, presumably CBD, by the time that it goes through your system, depending on how you're absorbing it, you may only have 1/10 of that. In other words, 2 milligrams. In other words, are you really going to get any real benefit? And so this is one example of when you're looking at gummy bears as a consumer, but it'll be tasty. And because I've tried the tincture, which is the oil and the extract, you put it underneath your tongue for 30 seconds. Why do you do that? Because you're going to get about 1/3 of the total amount of the milligrams that you're looking for the dosage. One of the reasons that I'm kind of biased towards smokable is that within literally a minute, if you take a smokable product, anybody that has started off cannabis on the pot side obviously understands that. On the hemp side, to get the bioavailability of the CBD, if you're trying something where you want to get as much of the CBD, there is nothing other than intravenous, is to use it in the form of a smokable product. So just different preferences for each person. Some people don't like the taste. Yeah. Just another perspective.
Can I just clarify, when you mean smokable, when you say smokable, do you also mean vapable?
I've got some real personal issues with vape because of the glycol. In other words, if anything that gets heat up changes its chemical composition to creating, if you have enough of that in your system, it's bad for you, kind of like nicotine. I would caution on that. I don't like any smokable from the standpoint of the possibility that if you do anything in excess, it could be bad for you. But if you're doing it not for recreation purposes, but for medicinal purposes, it beats the heck out of the alternative. In fact, a lot of people that are trying to kick the tobacco addiction have found smokable hemp as a great surrogate. It's about 40% success rate, which is a heck of a lot better than anything else out there in the pharmaceutical community right now.
I'll just add to that from a consumer standpoint or at the retail level. It really, when you're buying products for the first time, it's really dependent on what issues you're trying to resolve.
Yes.
If you're buying products from a gas station or somewhere that doesn't provide any education or doesn't really know what they're selling, you're not only not going to see results, but you run into the risks of vape products having other contaminants or other chemicals that are in there. There's some very clean vapable products that are just distillate and terpenes. There's nothing added, no VG, no PG, things of that nature. So you really got to look into what issues you're trying to resolve. If it's pain, smokable by far is the #1 way. It's the fastest way into the bloodstream. The onset time is super quick. If you're dealing with arthritis or things of that nature, maybe a capsule or a tincture is what you're looking for. But going back to that word bioavailability, you're going to have different levels of bioavailability. So going back to the pot world, if you will, when you smoke a joint, in a couple hours you need another joint. These cannabinoids burn off super quick in our system. So what we do at the retail level is we try to educate consumers to really come around and treat this as a multivitamin per se, where they want to take it twice a day, 3 times a day, and really keep those levels up in the system, because you do burn it off. And if you're trying to replenish a depleted system every morning, you're not going to find the best results. So you really want to keep pumping it in. It's just like marijuana in that aspect, that it's only going to last a certain amount of time.
But does not get you high.
The last thing I'll add to that is when culturing a product, take a look at the geography and any analytical data that you can harness from it. We launched the state regulatory system of Washington and BioTrack. After $1.4 billion of transactions, we found that a female from the age of 35 to 45 visits a retail. Now this is THC, so it might be a little bit different skewed. This is the available data that I have. That she visited the retail location 1.37 times as often as the next demographic, and when she was there, she spent 1.87 times as much. So what does that really tell you? When looking at consumer behavior in the form of a family, really the female is the dominant purchaser. She decides where they vacation, what they eat, what they wear. And so when you're designing SKUs and for a retail purpose and entering into very successful retail chains like Green Cross, you want to be aware that Green Cross is dominating the industry in Texas, but it might be a different type of SKU that will be applicable to the consumer in California. Mm-hmm. We're operating here in the cannabinoid markets, which you have a global operation here. You can get online in some markets. My job as a global expansion officer is to select different geographies and then culturally and prudently nurture products to development, all within a homogeneous brand. So be aware of the consumer that you're applying to.
Okay, getting back to that first-time buyer. Okay, I wanted to touch on two.
She's an attorney.
I'm an attorney. If you're keeping this to the first-time buyers, nobody's going to come and sue me for malpractice of malpracticing with this panel. Okay, 2 things I wanted to touch on in what we covered so far. Carl was talking about the gummies. If you are taking gummies, not only is the bioavailability low, however, in addition, if you're taking it for anti-inflammatory reasons, and these gummies are full of sugar, or they've got other additives, high fructose corn syrup, you're just counteracting the possible effects that the CBD could have in there. So that's something to look out for in all of your edible products and all of your tinctures and oils. Make sure that the other things they put in with the CBD are not inflammatory and therefore fighting against the CBD. And then when you brought up vaping, I'm glad you brought up that there's safe vaping. For those of you who are concerned, the things that you are looking to not have in your vape is PG, which is propylene glycol, PEG, polyethylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, sometimes abbreviated VG. And then when George mentioned vitamin E, if anybody's been watching the news, you might have thought, oh no, I heard vitamin E. No, but that vitamin E acetate is what they found in the mostly black market, if I understand correctly, vapes in places where CBD is not able to be made legally. They're making these black market vapes that have this vitamin E acetate, and that's what's been doing the lung damage. So that's why it's important not to get these gas station vapes like you were talking about, to make sure you know what you're buying. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about, Carl, if you could tell us a little bit about, somebody's going to a website, there's a million websites out there with CBD brands. What should they be looking for to know that the brand that they're buying and the products they're buying from that brand are of the highest quality and safe? And what kind of things should they be checking for?
It's actually a great question. One way to look at it, and I like to quote Warren Buffett, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And what that basically means is that if you're looking for, like if it was a commodity, a box of cereal, cheap does not necessarily mean better. All right, it's probably be just the opposite. The more lab testing that's done, the more touching that's done on the plant, the more refining that's done, it means it costs more. And obviously the party that is putting it up for sale has to transfer those costs on to at least break even. Obviously they're looking to make a profit. So that's a very simple thing. In other words, if you can find it, hey, but I can find it for $20 for a 500 milligram bottle, take one step back, turn around, walk away. Because I can guarantee you that's the fastest $20 you're gonna lose. So that's a really easy one. The second one is that go to the website of the entity that is indicating that they're selling it, okay? What does that website tell you? Is there no phone number? There's no email? There's no contact us? Okay, what you have is somebody that is selling sizzle. Okay, so it may look great, the packaging, but if you can't even find a live person to talk to, probably not gonna be a product that you wanna purchase as far as your other choices. So what would be something that you would be looking for? Obviously an address, a phone number, you have questions. A lot of times there are tabs that you can press on and says, here is the level of THC that's in this product, here's the level of CBD in this product, here's the total cannabinoids, here's the toxicity, which hopefully is non-detectable. In other words, everything from molds to heavy metals. And that's huge. So I'm going to make a statement, and I want to be very, very careful because there really are some fantastic middlemen in the distribution channel. But keep in mind that anybody that wants to make a buck quick does not care where the product comes from, and they're going to resell it and repackage it. So I'm very, very biased because, of course, I also have a farm. Farm direct, at least you know where it came from the raw plant, from the seed, all the way to the sale. When you cannot determine where that product came from, that's where the risk obviously occurs.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
One of you two gentlemen down the end, whoever would like to field this, they're looking at new products and they're like, okay, this one has hemp oil as the carrier, this one has coconut oil. Can you talk a little bit about the different carrier oils and what may help somebody differentiate which one they want to choose?
Sure. The two majority of them I use for the tincture is obviously MCT oil and also hemp oil. It just really depends on the flavor profile that I'm selling mostly to wholesale buyers, right? Now, as he was saying, when you're looking at, so and also it's a taste preference for you. And then some of them are adding like additional terpenes inside. Again, this goes back to when you're looking at the website, make sure you can see the owner, right? Figure out what the owner's story is. And then, of course, it's always favorable to figure out if it's from seed to table, because then you know the progeny. Some of the bigger ones, they're exhausting. They're exhausting one farm. So if they're exhausting one farm, you want to be able to figure out, what the progeny is, and then also you want to look at what type of extraction methods they're using. You want to make sure, if all possible, not using like really heavy hydrocarbons. If they're using ethanol, a lot of people are using ethanol. You got to make sure that their COA and their testing is saying that they're doing a remediation, and you can see the remediation. Other things you can look at is that as you delve in to do research, you can ask the manufacturer you're buying the stuff from, what kind of GMP certifications are you dealing with? A lot of the new startup ones, they're just doing self-certified, right? Whenever anybody says, we're FDA approved lab, FDA doesn't approve your lab. They just register it, okay? Everybody can get a registration. You can do it in 15 minutes. So you're looking for something above that. So the first step would be state GMP. You're looking for if they have like a state GMP. And you can ask for it because it's your money. Does that make sense? You're going and buying something,
Can you
right?
explain a little bit to first-time buyers what
Oh,
GMP is?
sure. You can come over here and slap me. So when you set up like a food manufacturing or a nutrition manufacturing company, of course you have to get your local license. You have to get your local license. That's the first step. But the second step you want to do is that you want to go and get your like state GMP, and then that means that the state will have an auditor come over and look at your processes and your SOPs and your facility, make sure it's got good pest control, all those things you're looking for. So that's the first step. And I'm going to tell you, a majority of the people you talk to who are manufacturing CBD at this juncture, they don't even have that a lot of times. Okay, they're just running as fast as they can. So you want to try, if all possible, to find brands whereby they've been possibly out for a long time, or if they're a dominant brand, most likely they've got a lot of FDA lawyers and all these other things. If you ask them, they'll say, yes, we're making it in a NSF CGMP certified location. So there's an organization out of Michigan that initially was affiliated with the University of Michigan. A long time ago, there was a book called The Jungle, right? A lot of meat processing problems, a lot of like contamination. So there was a professor there that started standardizing and codifying food production in the United States. And then as they grew, they became the most dominant, not just food certification company in the United States, but they also became water certifier, dietary supplement certifier. And then you also have organizations in like Switzerland that deals with SGS. They also deal with dietary supplements. And then you also have like good food safety manufacturing companies like BRIC and SQF. Those four things are kind of the things that, guess what? Costco is looking for. At Walmart's looking for. Does that make sense? So as a consumer, if you delve in and you figure out, hey, this is the brand I'm looking to buy, you could ask them, what kind of certifications do you have? And if they don't have at least a state GMP, I would skip it. So if they have NSF, they have BRC, they have SQF, they have SGS, some of these more prominent international certifications has been out for multiple decades. That's a very, very good beginning. Is that a little better? Okay.
That's good. Yes,
I'm
please.
going to add on to the carrier oil portion of the question. MCT is medium chain triglyceride. It is the most bioavailable or the fastest to process in the human body, which is why it's very common. Hemp, and it's also antibacterial. We have kids on feeding tubes. We always gear them towards the MCT because it doesn't create mold or fungus in those feeding tubes. Hemp seed oil is the other very popular one. MCT, when it comes down to buying products, is flavorless, odorless, tasteless. Hemp seed has that grassy, earthy taste that some people don't like. Hemp seed is very high in omega-3, 6, 9. It just has a lot of benefits. So when you're looking to purchase, you don't only want to research the company itself, but you want to research the carrier oil. There's only 22 carrier oils available to my knowledge right now. So you have grapeseed and olive oil and some other ones. But research the benefits of those carrier oils as well to determine what you want to purchase. And researching the companies, again, falls in the consumer's lap. There's no regulations. Somebody could be making it in the back of their store. The next person's making it in their garage. Right now, there's zero regulation. So you really have to do your due diligence and find a company that you trust. And just go with your gut feeling. Aside from, back to the COAs real quick, some COAs just show cannabinoid profiles. They don't show you the microbials and the...
Tell them what's a COA.
Oh, certificate of analysis, sorry. That's what every product should have available to you. So if you find a company that doesn't provide that for you, be it on the website or on a QR code on the product itself, that'll break down all the components of that product. The cannabinoids, the pesticides, mold, heavy metals. This season, mold is rampant in Oregon. So if your raw product is coming from Oregon, you would want to see the mold testing on that. But there's a cheaper test that they can do that only shows the cannabinoid profiles. It's not going to show you the mold or the pesticides or heavy metals.
May I add to that? So obviously the topic is talking about CBD. So the amount of CBD that you're purchasing probably is relevant. One of the things to think about when you're looking at the COA is what are the other cannabinoids? How much are the terpenes, the flavonoids? I'm not trying to impress you by all these scientific terms, but when you're looking at a product for full spectrum, what seems to be the general consensus, and this hails originally from the cannabis side, marijuana, is the more of the plant that you're able to have become bioavailable, the better likelihood that you're getting the medicinal benefit that you're seeking. So having an understanding that just because CBD is the hot thing because it's the most readily detectable may not necessarily be the only thing that you're benefiting from. That's why you can have a branded, publicly traded company, and there are certain people that are not getting any beneficial effects from that product. And you can get a private company and their product, their tincture works. So it's something to be thinking about.
I think what the doctor's touching on is the difference between, and I think we touched on it earlier, between an isolate compounded product and a full spectrum product.
Yes.
In pain specifically, we've recognized the importance of the CB1 and CB2 receptors. These receptors are directly correlated to our ability to relieve ourselves from pain. And CBD does a great job, but really only communicates very well in an isolated formula with the CB1 receptor. However, you throw a little full spectrum in there, a little THC, and you receive what's referred to as the entourage effect.
Yes.
And this entourage effect gives that full plant spectrum the ability to work. So that THC assists the CBD in the relief of your pain, and you'll find there's this dramatic percentage of increase in effectiveness of that. One last thing that I'll add is that not all products are the same. I think the doctor touched on it most potently, is understanding the importance of the quality of the material that you're buying and how it's been derived. There's many different extraction processes that have been identified and are being practiced around the country right now. These will continuously advance in their efficacy and their production of high quality terpene as well as cannabinoid profiles. Know the supplier as much as you can, all the way from seed through product. This way you'll ensure that you can ensure a consistent consumer experience. As the industry commoditizes, what will allow premiums of brands to be achieved is consistency of consumer experience.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That leads into what I was going to ask about, which is, should the consumers be concerned about things being organic or non-GMO, those kinds of things that they tend to be concerned about with food? Does that apply as well?
Let me start with the organic portion just real quick, and then I'll duck out. To my knowledge, there's only one certified organic hemp company or farm in the U.S. right now. I don't believe, and you might be able to touch on it more, but they're not giving out organic cannabis certifications at this point.
As a farmer, our product is organically grown. But to your point, very difficult to get that certification, particularly since the majority of the products being produced haven't been around for 3 years, which is the minimum amount of time. And why this is huge. If you do track, even if you're just a consumer that's looking at product, if you just kind of take a step back because you're ingesting something that you don't know a whole heck of a lot about other than the buzz. Okay, so if you just take a step back, and no pun intended, the amount of growing of hemp for CBD purposes has skyrocketed in the last 3 years. So if you have a farmer that says, hey, I can do soy or I can grow hemp. If I grow hemp, I might be able to get thousands of dollars an acre if I were to change the crop. Yes, but I also used herbicides, fertilizer, insecticides in order to keep those varmints and bad things from killing my plants. The hemp plant, it has the ability, sadly, as well as true for marijuana cannabis, to absorb from the earth all of these bad things, which creates a concentration in the flower. That's where the oil is coming from. So if you want to make sure that you understand where it's coming from, for no other reason. You don't want to be poisoned by the stuff that's presumably supposed to be good for you, which is the CBD. I did want to add one other thing, because there was a comment made before about the various types of base oils. There's good and there's great, and I don't have a horse in that race, but I would want to make the point. Some of the oils, not unlike other products, take a look at the manufacturing date that presumably will be on the package, because some of the oils go rancid. Okay, which means you don't want to be taking that product if it's been sitting in a drawer for a year, if it's the wrong type of oil that's in there. Just something to think about.
Is there, and I'll get come right after, is there a preferred way to store the oils?
Well, obviously try to get dark
Yes.
locations. If you want to put in a refrigerator, it'll last a little longer.
Yes.
Look at the manufacturing date, of course.
The bottle color.
The bottle color. On the organic section, there's only a few right now, but I'm going to tell you next quarter, there's a lot coming online
Yes.
now that I know of is coming online. And as a consumer, what you need to do is, if you do see an organic logo, you can look at the certifier in the back and see if there's a good certifier and check them out. Plus, if you go to USDA.gov, there's an organic database you can check and you can verify it. You're the third party verifying it, that you see their product on, and then they're allowed to use that logo.
And that logo is FDA owned, right? They're the only ones
Yeah.
who can.
So you need to see it on the website is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
I think we have about 5 minutes left, if I'm reading Carl's watch right from afar.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's open this up for questions.
From my standpoint, I just want to modify what I think I heard you say. The only way is vaping. Smokable isn't just vaping. I mean, it's pre-rolls. It's taking a nug, putting it into a pipe, smoking it. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear that smoking to me does not just mean vaping. Yes, there is a product out there that is vis-a-vis patch. Admittedly, I always acknowledge when I don't know enough about something to comment on. I have not seen anything that is third party that indicates that's the way to go. And in that absence, if it doesn't hurt you, you can give it a try. You can use horse liniment and accomplish the same thing, stuff that they use for racehorses if you're muscle ache.
So my comment is that, of course, the fastest is smokable. Second is like, in my opinion, sublingual, or you have people doing suppository type products. Transdermal. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you on transdermal. Okay, we co-pack a lot of stuff for in big volume for direct sales companies. So when you get into transdermal, that's an OTC product. So you have a lot of startups, as I said, they're just doing, as he said, just doing it in the garage. They're just whipping out as fast as possible, saying and putting on patches, transdermal, but the delivery system may not be transdermal. However, if they get big enough and then they get audited one day from the government, it's a lot more difficult to have your facility OTC approved. Because you're
Over the counter,
because you're pretty much in pharmaceutical grade. Does that make sense? So that's a whole nother ball of wax of getting into trouble. Yeah.
I'll touch on it from the retail or distribution side. Everybody has a transdermal patch. Most of the big companies, if you will. From what I've been told, there's only 3 actual processes that can be classified as transdermal. And I think, like Peter mentioned earlier, that's testing and other very expensive means to be able to prove that. The biggest thing that I see, real quick, Peter, I know you got something to say, is transdermal patches on the pharmaceutical side are usually applied on your foot or on your wrist, which are the most venous parts of your body. If you look at the CBD world or the cannabis world with their transdermal patches, they're putting it on the shoulder where the pain is, or on the leg where the pain is. There's a lot of a lack of education in this field, and I think people are just exploiting it right now.
Yeah, efficacy is where it's going to come all about. And as the industry begins to commoditize over the next coming years, we're going to see real medical companies enter the space very, very quickly. The transdermal, I don't think I've seen a transdermal full spectrum. Have you guys?
Yes, I have.
No. So that tells you right there that in order to achieve their actual intended approach for the transdermal, oftentimes they're using this classic menthol or lidocaine.
Yeah.
So just, they're just riding the wave right now. And we're all about efficacy. So I would say that that's probably why the product category is not leading.
Though I would harken back to the keynote a lot of us saw this morning where there was a study that, not transdermal, but the topical CBD application in arthritis was shown to be
Absolutely.
Topical creams or roll-ons have a directly different effect, in my opinion. And both chemical compounds, efficacy, and I'm sure that George could speak more to that, but in my opinion, that's the case.
All right, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to open a small business, just a retail store. I currently have a website. I did a lot of research before I decided what companies I was going to go with. I have 2 right now that I'm carrying. But as I'm looking on all these different reviews, how is it that you know which companies exactly are, like a lot of them, like there was one that sent me out samples, which was the reason I bought them and decided to sell them. But there's so many out there. How do you hone it down for somebody like me that is going to sell probably maybe 3 or 4 different lines in a local retail storefront in a small town in Utah? How do I determine which companies I really want to sell and provide? Because I want to build a reputation. I'm going to sell something that's going to work. I want repeat customers.
You
I'm
have
going to do it to help people. I don't want to sell something that you can buy at the
Thank
local
you.
7-Eleven. I want to actually do it.
So I'll start since at the retail level. You're from Utah, you said?
Yes.
I mean, you spent
Yes.
you spent the money to get here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Invest in yourself and in your company and go meet these people. I have I call it the barbecue philosophy. It's just something I made up. But long story short, if I'm going to do business with you, I break it down into, if I had a barbecue at my house with my whole family, are you somebody that I would invite? And if the answer to that is no, I'm not doing business with you. But if you can meet these companies face to face, talk to them, get your gut feeling of what you feel, walk through their processes, their procedures, whatever they have that they can provide you, it gives you a huge advantage in knowing who you're dealing with. But it is very vital to build a brand, a trusted brand, so that you do have that retention.
Right.
We literally will fly out customers to the farm so that they can see what it is that we're doing.
You got a
Admittedly,
business card?
anybody want to go to Durango?
Free vacations. The size of their beard always matters. I'll say that. But on a lighter note, again, to your point, to Josh's point, you've traveled here, you invest in yourself. A lot of these shows, and to the doctor and attorney, the reason she's up here is because she has value to bring in the form of education. The reason we're up here is because we're experienced in the industry. Start with picking the brains of the people that have been recognized by the industry as the noted authorities, because we wouldn't be here if we were selling snake oil.
But how do I find you? So that's my thing.
You found it. You found it.
What are you doing later? I'm in room 734.
You'll have to talk to my wife.
So,
What I'm saying is, as I'm looking on all these, as I'm Googling and researching and looking, and I didn't want to carry just anything. How do I find somebody?
It took me years of
You know,
Instagram
I-
probing and going and visiting and coming to shows, meeting people. Vetting vendors is one of the most
Yes.
time-consuming and complicated pieces. And if you have not been involved in cannabis before this whole CBD movement, you are way behind the curve in knowing what people you want to talk to, where you want to talk to them, what to feel from them, what questions to ask. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, and lean on this. Why it's like George is a great resource for you because he's done all your research for you.
I got George's card.
But the main thing I think you just need to network, as they're saying,
Say
network,
that.
because the internet is all a bunch of fake news right
Yes,
now.
yes,
So
yes.
you gotta go and meet the people, and then you gotta find a story that resonates with you. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, how you differentiate Knoxville. We have good barbecue. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna get in the fighting
I'm in
war
Texas.
here.
We
We're
got
gonna get in
good
the fighting war.
barbecue.
They started in Tennessee before we went to Texas. Okay. All right.
So to use the example that you just gave, you're in Utah. Obviously, there are some farms that have been around for a while that are growing good product. I'd start there because they worry about their reputation. Literally, it starts there. That's where I would start, and who they may recommend. So it really is kind of networking. If you were trying to expand, you go with where the source comes from. The state, particularly Utah, if I'm not mistaken, is fairly narrow as far as who can actually provide a product and how it's regulated. So you're actually in a better state than some states where it's kind of the Wild West.
You have to register. I can't sell a product legally, and I want to keep that reputation. I want to keep it within the legalities. I don't want to be shut down for something stupid. But you have to register, which I haven't heard any other state, if you know of some maybe, but through the Utah Department of Agriculture hemp registry.
That's
and they
true
do it
for
by
most
SKU.
states.
And so if I'm buying from a distributor, a supplier, they have to be on that registry or I cannot sell them. I had to have a list of that even to get it approved in the city that I live in. But it costs $250 per SKU item.
Yep.
So I have to be pretty particular if they're not already on there or they don't want to pay the money and I really want to provide that product. I have to be particular about what I'm going to sell.
So you add them to the registry, or
Well,
the
they can add
company?
themselves. They can pay and add, or they have to be registered with it. Whether or
Right.
not, like I made a deal and said, can you do it? There was a company I contacted in Colorado that actually I pushed them and they put their salve on, and then the beginning of the year they're going to put a couple other products
Right.
on. So they paid the fee. They went through the process because they wanted to, be
I
able
mean,
to.
it's-
Can I recommend?
Oh, I was gonna say, if this is very specific to one person, can we maybe talk afterward? Okay, anybody else, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, anybody else have a question? Because we're running low on time.
Great moderation, thank you.
Are we all, okay, we're out of time. Thank you, gentlemen, so much
Thank
for
you.
this.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, you have one? Yeah, no. George, like that here next